Would you like me to ask her what she needs?
Yes, please. All right. Okay. I'd like to call to order the January 10th meeting of the Curriculum and Instruction and Student Life meeting for the City of Beverly.
Thank you, Dr. Mackenzie DeFranza, and I will help with our preamble about our hybrid and remote meeting model that we're using this evening. We are using a platform that's at no cost to the district that does allow for remote participation and public access to the open portions of our meeting. BevCam is also streaming and broadcasting our meeting tonight. Thank you so much, BevCam. On June 16, 2021, the former governor signed Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, and on February 12th and again July 16th of 2022, he extended provisions to, among other things, allow public bodies to continue to hold meetings remotely until March 31st, 2023, and our now current governor and legislature have extended further for 2 years until March 31st, 2025, this provision. These acts specifically suspend the need for a quorum in the chair to be physically present and asks our body to use technical methods to allow for safe public access. As a note, Beverly also has prior approval from the Attorney General for remote participation, although through that permission, the chair and a quorum do physically need to be present once this act and its extensions expire. Tonight is a Curriculum, Instruction, and Student Life Standing Committee meeting, and that means we do not have an opportunity for the public to address the body. However, at our 7:30 meeting of the regular school committee, you will have that opportunity. Joining us today are members of the school committee and various members of the district administration and leadership teams, as well as student representatives. I will conduct a full roll call attendance in a moment for the record, since we are meeting on this application and it sometimes does not display all of the participants. Please remember, if you are joining us on our remote platform, that any audio or video you supply will become part of the meeting record. As such, we encourage you to use your mute functionality to prevent background noises. I would now like to conduct the roll call to ensure that those participants joining us can both see and hear us this evening. In person, we have Dr. Ken-Ann Mackenzie DeFranza
Here.
and Ms. Karen Robinson.
Here.
We're also joined by Assistant Superintendent Dr. Dorothy Flaherty, Superintendent Dr. Sue Chirocek.
Here.
We have leaders Megan Sudak and Paul Casey. And our student representatives, we have Sadie Brennan.
Here.
Ellie Corbett. Here. Thank you. Finn Kohler-Orvit. Here. And Althea Passini-Gross. Okay. We are also joined remotely by our leadership member, Kate Twombly.
Here.
Great. And just looking at the other attendees online, that is BevCam, the assistant superintendent, and myself on the platform. I think that's all we have right now. Thank you, Dr. Mackenzie, for allowing me to call the roll. And I believe at this time, Dr. Flaherty, you have an agenda.
Yes, we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance, and I would like to begin by welcoming Dr. McKenna Mackenzie DeFranza to our committee. There's been some changes of committee makeup, and we welcome you to be our new chair. And so would you start us by starting the pledge for us this evening?
Sure. Thank you. I pledge
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Our agenda this evening will include voting on our approval of the minutes from our December 13th meeting. We have our student representatives here to give us an update on student life at our middle school and high school. I will be joined by Ms. Megan Sudak to give you an update on an attendance campaign that we have been working on and will go public with starting next week. And then we are have Mr. Paul Casey, our Director of Humanities at the high school, to give us an introduction and overview into the learning and the work that we're doing to prepare for AI in our schools. So the first thing on our agenda is the approval of our minutes from the December 13th, 2023 CISL meeting, and I would look for a motion to approve those minutes.
I'll make a motion that we approve the meeting records from our December 13th meeting.
It's been a motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Ms. Abel, could you call a roll?
Absolutely. Dr. Kenna Mackenzie DeFranza.
I will abstain since I was not at that meeting.
That sounds fair. Ms. Robinson.
Yes.
Ms. Twombly.
Abstain. I was also absent.
Fair enough. And I was present. I vote yes. I'm Rachel Abel. Finn. Dante is absent. Ellie? Yes. Sadie? Yes. And Althea? Okay, I have 2 abstentions. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 yeses.
Okay, the next thing on our agenda is always one of our highlights because we get to hear from our students. And I think last time I started with the high school, so this time I'm going to invite our middle school students to come forward first. So Finn, would you like to start for us? Oh, wait a minute, we need a microphone.
We forgot
Make
to
sure
give
the
you
little
my-
green mic is there. All right, you have to start over, sorry.
So, 8th graders have been nominated for the National Junior Honor Society recently, and we're pretty excited about that, and it's going well. Yearbook has begun making the yearbook and advertising for it. That's going well. I'm in the yearbook club, and it's pretty fun. 6th graders are doing a bunch of projects, which quote unquote are fun and interesting. And ski club started yesterday. It was snowing, which was really nice.
Which was nice for the first time, and
Yeah,
now
then-
all the
yeah.
snow's gone, because I live in Haverhill and drive by the
Yeah.
the ski area.
And then finally, the band program, I just wanted to say, super fun. It's my favorite part of the day, and I look forward to it every day. And
Which-
Mr. Krafka is just the best.
What part, are you in concert band, jazz
Concert
band,
band.
both? Concert band. They are pretty phenomenal. Your Christmas concert was outstanding.
It's pretty awesome, yeah.
All right, do we have any questions for Finn? Well, you've started your very exciting part of the school year, so enjoy every minute of it. Last half of 8th grade, there's a lot of great things coming forward
Yeah,
for
I'm
you.
excited.
So, all right, Althea, would you like to give us your update?
The start of the new year has been a fresh start for many of the students at BMS. Many classes have been providing the opportunity to create vision boards and writing pieces to help motivate peers to reach their goals. Teachers are encouraging new habits to be more efficient with schoolwork, and goal setting is one of them. Additionally, benchmarks have begun as mid-year testing, based primarily around English and math. In the 8th grade, a dance has also been scheduled for February 9th, and students attending academic trips such as Quebec or Puerto Rico have begun their pre-departure projects. These trips are a great way to connect with peers and learn more about other places and their culture and language.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
What's your favorite subject or part of the 8th grade?
I'm not sure. Probably math.
Math.
Yeah.
Great. We love
Right
math.
answer. That was a goodie.
Thank you. Ellie, would you like to tell us about even more exciting time of the year, second half of senior year?
Yes, I would. I'd start by saying we had a delayed start on Monday. Whoever made that call, wonderful decision. Thank you so much. For those of us who drive ourselves to school, it was great not having to worry about getting up super early to shovel the driveway and wipe off the car. I know I didn't go anywhere on Sunday, so my car was snowed in. We've started midterm prep. Teachers are working on getting out study guides and letting us know what we should be practicing. There's supposed to be a new schedule for midterms this year. I'm pretty excited to see this. I think it's going to be a good change. I do think the 30 minutes in between the first and second test was too much. It got a little chaotic. And we get out a little bit earlier, which is always good. The Career Education and Discovery Fair was on Tuesday. I know a whole bunch of seniors who attended that to try and find connections for our REACH internships. Those are coming along. Yeah, that's all I've got.
Do you have your internship yet?
I'm filling out a formal application for the one at Beverly Hospital, but I still have to reach out if that doesn't work out to some other nearby hospitals.
Excellent. And Sadie?
Hello, everyone. So, Happy New Year. We got back from break, full swing. Winter sports are just about halfway done, which is sad for me, but it's exciting because spring's coming up. Sophomores had a guidance meeting in their English classes to go over a test we had done on the virtual day back in August to discuss our career paths and the choices we have there. It was sort of a personality test, I guess, for personality traits that you would see commonly in the workplace, and it sort of gave you many options based on what you got most commonly selected. It gave you choices as to where you can maybe look for career path choices, which will help us down the road when we look for our REACH internship. So that was very exciting.
And you don't have to share what it was, but did you feel like your interests hit you?
Yeah, actually it did. The career I've been looking at for a while, which is a neurologist, it was the top one that it gave me. So
Excellent.
hopefully that's
Good job.
a good sign.
All right. Any questions for our students? Okay, thank you. Megan, do you want to come up here with us? You can just pull your chair up right.
Thank you.
Here, I'll just move over. We're good. Okay. So this has been work that we have been working on since the pandemic, but it's in the news more and more frequently about chronic absenteeism and the impact on student learning and the impact of the rebounding of it since COVID, and how districts across the entire nation are still struggling to get students re-engaged and coming to school in the numbers that we had pre-pandemic. So we wanted to just kind of share with you some of the work that we've been doing as a leadership team. Megan has been doing a lot of work with her City Connects coordinators around attendance as well. And we'll be trying to be a little bit more public with what we're doing and involving the entire community as we move into the spring. So just so that we have a common understanding of what we're talking about when we talk about chronic absenteeism, we're talking about a student who misses 10% or more of school days due to absence for any reason, which is excused, unexcused, suspensions, medical leave. And the reason that we look at this is because it can translate, and research shows that it can translate into students having difficulty learning to read by the third grade, achieving in middle school, and graduating from high school. So it really has an impact across the entire continuum of grades that we have. And when we talk about 10%, we have 180 school days that we need to do, so we're talking about students that hit the mark of 18 or more absences within a school year, and that equates to about 2 days per month. A lot of the information you're going to see tonight is from attendanceworks.org. They have a lot of great information, research, and also resources for parents, teachers, and community members. And there is a link in the slides, which you'll receive tomorrow morning after tonight's meeting. So the other thing that we really wanted to change is the vernacular of the language that we use. And so when we were going to school, you probably heard about truant officers, or we talked about students being truant from school. And now we're using the term chronic absence. And that's because it's really a different approach in what we look at and how we attack and try to reduce those absences. When we talked about truancy, it was much more of a regulation, a legal commitment, because it is a law that you need to be in school, but it was more about consequences and punishments for not coming to school, and it only counted unexcused absences. So if you were at school for a reason that you didn't have an excuse for, or you were what often was referred to as skipping. You were not in school without permission. And again, that emphasizes on compliance and school rules, whereas when we talk about chronic absence, we're counting all absences, excused, unexcused, suspensions, medical leaves, and it emphasizes the academic impact of missed days and also the the lack of social emotional skills. And it really is taking a more positive strategy about how to either re-engage students that have not been engaged in school or don't feel like they want to go to school, but it also is looking past the fact that they're not in school to try to solve the systemic reasons that they may not be here. One of the things that you'll see in a future slide is we're actually looking at preschool, probably for the first time. It's not mandatory for students to go to preschool, but if they are there, it's really our first chance to start to build routines and expectations about coming to school and why it's important to be there. And you'll see that one of our highest percentage of absences is at our preschool level. But it really is setting the importance for both families and for students to think about school as a very important part of a student's day for both academic and social growth that they're going to need to thrive in all the grades up through graduation in high school. Chronic absenteeism has more than doubled since the start of the pandemic, from 8 million to an estimated 16 million students nationwide, and that equates to almost 1 out of 3 students. We were on a call earlier this afternoon with the commissioner, and they were talking about at the height of chronic absenteeism right here in Massachusetts, we were at over 25%, which was 1 in 4 students in Mass. Now, Massachusetts has seen one of the stronger rebounds, but we're still above pre-pandemic numbers. And Beverly follows that tradition. We have had a strong rebound, but we still have not met where we were pre-pandemic. So when we look at attendance categories, we look at 3 areas. One is good attendance, the second is at risk, and then that number that we just talked about around chronic absenteeism being that 10% or more school days, which is 18 or more in a school year. Now, we know that our goal is never to be at 0 because we know that's not realistic, right? There are illnesses, there are family situations, there are personal situations where students need to miss school, and that is understandable. And so that's why when we look at good attendance, we're talking fewer than 5% of school days, which in a 180-day school year would be less than 9 days. Our students that are at risk are in that range between 5% and 10% of school, which would be 10 to 17 days in a school year. And so what we do is we're looking monthly at our attendance, and we use that 10% figure throughout the school year. So when we looked, and you'll see in a few minutes, a chart that looked at attendance through the end of December 31st, we're looking at 7 days. So if you're above 7 days, you are on a trajectory that will get you most likely to that chronic absenteeism rate if you stay on the same pathway that you're on. And so we start that right in September at 1 day, and then it moves up from there. And Megan, do you want to add anything about the work and how your coordinators use this data?
Sure. So I think previously one of my coordinators had spoken about at Hannah. She started this last year. Her Hannah Transformative Mornings, and because at the Hannah School they were seeing a lot of students coming in tardy, and so this is kind of a play off of what comes from Attendance Works and the attendance playbook, and that using some positive incentives to get students, to school on time. We know it's, for the most part, it's not the students' fault that they're not getting to school. And so we put a little bit on them, and they have a chance to earn 10 extra minutes of recess if they keep continuing and showing improved attendance. So that's just one of the little snippets of programs we've done. We've talked about doing attend dances, where we have a dance party for the class with the highest attendance. We've talked about a bunch of different ones. But what the coordinators have been doing has been
taking sort of a role of checking in with students on attendance. And if you looked at their calendars, you'd see every day it's like different kids, they're checking their attendance. All of the coordinators went to a DESE-sponsored workshop beginning of October, and it was fantastic. It gave us a bunch of different ideas, gave us an opportunity to talk to other districts and what they're working on. So it's a constant discussion. Today alone, I was in my network meeting with City Connects, and that's all of the program managers all over, including Ireland, including, Indiana, and it's everywhere. It's even over there in Ireland, but I was in a group specifically just to talk about attendance. And what's been great about that is I've been able to learn about how other school districts are handling attendance makeup or buyback. And that's another thing that we've gone to a few webinars and looking and researching on different methods we could use to perhaps have students catch up when they've missed and not have so much against them. So that's what my coordinator's doing, what I'm doing. I'm really looking at data. You'll see this. I've been tracking the attendance data pretty much the whole first part of the school year and been updating principals with everything from here's who's trending this way to here's where all of our students live. Maybe we need to look at how these students are getting here. What's the reason? The real goal for us is finding the root cause as to why they're not getting to school. And is it a transportation issue? Is it, it's a food issue? It's work issue. It could be anything. And it could be that we have had some kids that have had some illness and, it was at the beginning of the year and now they're catching up. So the data, I'm constantly looking at the data and giving more out there, but it's something that we're making an honest effort at really jumping in on because it's something the state is pushing, but more importantly, because we know it starts at such a young age. If we can build the idea that you do need to come to school.
Do the coordinators at the high school have sort of a unique situation where there's Panther Days and Pride Days?
Great question. Yeah.
Speaking from some personal experience, just the luck of the draw, I would say 5 absences on a Panther Day really hurts. Almost like a 10-day absence,
Oh,
right?
easily, yes. And I know the high school's a little bit different, right? Because you're then getting into different policies and you get the every other day. What Carla does, Carla Femino up at the high school, she actually is helping with students specifically who are going to the attendance review board. So if they've reached a certain number of absences and they could end up failing, she's helping them to gather what they need to, and to how can they get themselves to a point where they'd be passing the class if it wasn't just for the attendance days, because we do have other resources at the high school that are taking care of the other aspects of it. So she looks at it from that lens, and because she's really only working with sophomores, but she is helping any student that signs up for attendance review board. But yeah, so the numbers are a little different for high school when you break down, but it's been interesting to look at, especially, which is why I kind of went down a rabbit hole of looking to see where everyone lives, because what really hit me was that we might have a student who is at BMS that is parents are getting phone calls. They might have a sibling that is at BHS and they're getting phone calls, and then they have another sibling at McEwen or Ayers and they're getting phone calls. And to be honest, not everyone loves to get a phone call from the school. So now you're taking people who, may not have had great experiences with school and now they're getting 3, and it can feel bombarding. So it's not screaming warm and fuzzies, yes. So that's how we're looking at, that's what made me kind of look at that and to see, where can we help and kind of streamline this so it's a positive message from everyone. We just want the students there.
And DESE is being much more flexible and put out some grant money, which we received, in looking at trying to find creative ways to make up time, like Saturday school. You'll hear about the fact that we have some math academies running both during February and April vacation. And if students attend that, then they can get buyback on their days if they attend, which means that they can kind of take away a few of those absences. Did you have a question?
Yes.
I have a quick question. Can you say more about the incentives for elementary? Because I'm feeling like parents are the ones that get students out the door? Are there instances where students are old enough to be getting themselves to school but are not getting there on time, and there's incentives for that?
It's not yet. We haven't gotten into that. This is, we've tried to put it in almost a positive peer pressure from the students say, hey, we got to get to school. And it seems it has actually worked really well, where it's, let's start with, we're being tardy 5 days a week. Let's break that down. Let's get in, let's get in on time 3 days a week. And Eric has had fantastic success with parents saying, hey, I didn't realize. I can take an example of one of my former students who was a parent there. And I picked up the phone. I was like, do you realize? And she's like, oh my goodness, I didn't think about it. Like, I didn't think it was a big deal. He was just getting there 5-10 minutes late. But missing that morning meeting time for those elementary students is so vital. So sometimes it was more of like, they don't really truly know that 5-10 minutes makes a huge difference. And then you get kids who are a little later, and then that becomes, an interruption for the rest of the class. So it's very small things, but it's trying to get the students to take a little bit of ownership too, saying, I've got to get to school, this is important, and also my class is relying on me, so we, can compete.
And so we're going to try to do some education around the parent piece as well. But we all know that probably the biggest impact on parent change is going to be the kid, right? So if you have a third grader that's like, I need to get to school, I need to get to school, I need to get to school, you're going to get them to school just so that you can get your morning moving.
Ms. Robinson.
Mrs. Robinson.
Thank you. So the elementary students get like the dance parties and maybe extra recess, and the high school and middle school students, would they get
It's
a Saturday or a February vacation?
It's individual per school right now.
individual per school right now.
Okay.
So not everybody gets the
No.
dance party. That's at Hannah.
Yeah.
But that's part of the campaign that we're looking at, is
Right.
trying to find more positive ways and to not make it punitive, but to also, if you miss, then we want to find ways for you to help to recoup that time.
Right.
as
So
well.
I'm just thinking
Yeah.
that a high school student might think that coming to school on February or April vacation might be, or Saturday might be
Yeah.
punitive.
We have the math academies are running for elementary as well.
Okay.
So it'll be at elementary. There'll be, I believe we chose North Beverly today. It'll be one location, but all the schools will be able to send third and fourth graders. The middle school has a program running, and then also the high school. And they're not, they're meant to be engaging and fun. It's going to be project-based learning while still working on math concepts. Yeah, it's going to be an invitation by the principals. So I wanted to first say that, as we talked about in our MCAS presentation, that we did make some really, really strong gains in Beverly in all of our categories last year. We either met and often exceeded our attendance targets. And we hope that that's why we're trying to be proactive now, so that we can have another positive year next year. And the problem is the closer and closer you get, it really gets into the core of students that may be struggling. This just is to give you kind of a snapshot of where we were on December 31st. And we can say that this is positive compared to where we were in previous years since COVID. It still shows, and if you think back to the kind of the day score there, we're only at 7. So none of these are actually chronically absent yet, unless they've gone over the 18 days already. And we do have some of those students. But these percentages include any student that is at 7 or above, which means that if they're in that 7 to 18 range, they're at risk of being in the category come the end of the school year. And you'll see that McEwen, which is our preschool, is the highest percentage. And again, in previous years, we haven't really focused on preschool. And this is probably more around education for parents, around how important it is to be at school. And it really comes down to, and I think we all kind of got into the pandemic where everybody was told, if you have a sniffle, stay home, right? And now we're trying to rechange that mindset to say, yes, there are going to be times when you're sick. If you have a fever, you should be at home. But if you're just tired, don't use that day to just kind of stay home and miss school, save the days to be absent for when you really are either sick or there is a family emergency or a family situation or personal situation that you really need to be out for. So make sure that you kind of bank those for the days that really count. This was interesting as we are looking through, and Megan alluded to this in her remarks, to the fact that we often will find that if we have a family who has a student who is chronically absent, it tends to be a family problem. So that's why we want to look past they're just absent to say, what is the reason? Why are students out? Or why do they have a student at elementary? If the leadership is talking, oftentimes they'll talk about a family and say, oh yeah, I have a sibling that is also out all the time, or, there's somebody at the elementary, there's somebody at middle school, and somebody at high school. And when we looked at the data, that was 21% of our students that ended up being labeled as chronically absent. They belong to a household with multiple children that are considered at risk. I'm not going to read through each of the key steps, but this goes back to the attendanceworks.org. And they really are focusing their work around 6 key messages. And it is around how do we get the community to start to send the message and improve attendance and connections and achievement. So that means that people are hearing it, seeing signs at grocery stores or in the pharmacy, or they're in their faith-based organizations, and they hear the message about how it's important to go to school, and not just coming all the time from just the school, but that really making it a community expectation that we support our students and we want them to achieve the most that they can. And so we want to send the message that it's important to be at school, and then to create mentorships or internships where students are engaged and want to come here, and not to blame them, but to support them and to find out the reason why they're not coming. And taking it from more of a positive problem-solving approach, which is some of the things that Megan had talked about and that her counselors are working hard to do. This last slide, moving forward, we just wanted to share with you how some of the things that we're going to be doing, in addition to our weekly work that our principals do all the time with their own staff and with their own counselors. So we're going to be sending a letter home with 2 handouts. The first one connects to the habit of good attendance for elementary and for younger children. And you'll see that it has that kind of explains the problem, which a lot of times it's really just letting people know what the impact is and why it's important for them to be there. And then we also have one that we will send home that is targeted for middle school and high school, and it lets you know, did you know the reasons why? So for an example, by 6th grade, absenteeism is one of the 3 signs that a student may drop out of high school. So these are kind of warning things to be thinking about, so that it's not just when they get to high school and are chronically absent that we say, oh, we need to approach that problem and solve it now. No, we should have been looking at that and looking for warning signs years ago. Then it also gives some suggestions as to what families can do and how they can help their teenagers to stay engaged, and then also ways to communicate with the school so that you can become true partners. We'll also be sending a similar letter with those handouts to some of our key community resources, such as medical facilities and faith leaders. And we welcome suggestions for other people that you think would be important to get that information so that they can help to send a positive message to the young people that they work with. It is a focus of our instructional leaders meeting every month. And we also, I meet with principals and we go through the list, and a lot of times there are specific reasons, especially for some of our students with higher numbers. They're aware of it. They're either working with families or they're working for alternative placements. So there might be a reason behind it, but that doesn't mean that we just check it off and say, okay, we know why they're out. Now we need to go the step further and say, what can we do to either A, make sure that they're getting an educational experience outside of the school, or are there ways that we can get them in for half days? Is there a way that we can, slowly re-engage them into the learning process? We also want to share and talk with PTOs and school councils so that our parents can start to spread the word amongst their groups as to the importance of making sure that all students that are in school. We often find, and the research shows, that our students of lower socioeconomic status, our special education students, and our L families tend to be a higher percentage of our students that have chronic absenteeism. So we want to be thinking about other ways to reach out specifically to our higher subgroup problems, which we saw the impact on their achievement levels when we looked at MCAS, and that they were lagging behind the recovery that some of our students from our all category, our aggregate category, and our white category of students were achieving. And then we want to do a family engagement goal. When we are doing some surveying, you probably got them at home as parents in the district. We're starting to work on our district improvement plan and strategic planning, and family engagement is coming to the surface as a goal that we want to be able to work into our future work. And attendance would fall under that category. And then we want to do some messaging campaigns at school events, maybe at a parent information night, or having a speaker come in to talk about not just attendance, but basically the whole partnership between school and home, and then maybe doing an art competition where we could either make T-shirts or something that can go on their tech devices, a sticker or something like that, but doing something for elementary, middle, and high school that would send the right message about the importance of coming to school. Ms. Abel.
I appreciate what you've presented, and I think reaching out to caregivers and also giving ownership to students is really important. I do wonder what tools we're putting in the toolkit for our teachers to make sure that they impress upon students that they're missed when they're not there. Not necessarily violating any confidentiality with the students or their families, but making them feel like you belong here and, we really miss you when you're not here. I think that, I've heard anecdotally some teachers' attendance isn't necessarily, 100%. And sometimes students are like, well, my teacher's not going to be there today, so there's no point in me going. There's going to be a substitute, or, I'm not really going to contribute anything today because I'm not feeling 100%, or I'm tired. I think I hear that one a
Yep.
lot. But I'm just wondering what tools we're giving our teachers and our staff to help them impress upon students that their contributions matter, that every day matters.
That every day matters. Yeah, we will make sure that we include that in the work we're doing.
It's a whole section of the playbook too, is messaging for them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Students, as we move forward in this, we'd love to hear your voice too of things that you think might help to send the message about how important it is to be at school. So if you think of any good ideas, send me an email.
Awesome.
All right. And now I'd like to introduce Mr. Paul Casey to talk about artificial intelligence.
All right. Well, thank you. Excuse me. As I think everybody knows, artificial intelligence has really come to the forefront in society over the last year or so. However, this is something that's been evolving for a number of years. We've used it in our everyday lives, probably without even knowing, from something as simple as text message suggestions on your phone to something that maybe impacts schools a little bit more over the last couple of years, such as photo math. However, in December of 2022, schools were dramatically impacted as ChatGPT was introduced to the general public for the first time. It was introduced, and I'm not sure if it was a coincidence or not, right before the holiday break. Just as something that people were starting to find out about. But as we emerged back from that holiday break, teachers and administrators started to see its use more so in an improper way almost immediately. Students began using it to answer more traditional teacher prompts and assignments without really actually even understanding its use at all. Teachers specifically, but admin also, began to scramble to figure out how do we combat this, how do we even eliminate it from our schools, and certainly districts across the country were looking for solutions to limit the use of it, but more importantly, come up with policies around it, namely when it comes to plagiarism. And I'm going to go to a slide in a minute that kind of shows why that became very, very difficult for us. What many teachers began to do, specifically in the spring of 2023, as a way to combat it, was to revert back to even some older teaching practices. Pencil and paper assignments, traditional note-taking, in some cases more lecture-based teaching. And it was definitely a defense response to what we had, which was a one-to-one school, everything on Google Classroom, digital writing assignments. It was really kind of like an everyday trying to do something to combat artificial intelligence. I was certainly one that was kind of in that camp, as I know that Dr. Chirocek and Dr. Flaherty can attest to, the number of admin meetings that we had last year where I was kind of throwing my hands up and saying, that's it, this is it for education. And, and I think because of that, I was encouraged by Dr. Chirocek to take a summer course. Take a summer course over the course of about 6 weeks with AJ Giuliani on, how can we bring AI into schools, harness it, but also inform our teachers of how to address it and use it properly. This was the first slide that was shown in that course, and it's a quote that I was aware of before, and I probably should have thought about it as I was kind of scrambling myself with AI. But this comes from the last CEO of Blockbuster Video, Jim Keyes, in 2008. And he said, neither Redbox nor Netflix are even on the radar screen in terms of competition. I did present this to our teachers and had to remind myself that even some of our staff had never stepped foot in a Blockbuster Video at this point. However, this
And they don't know what you're talking about.
I know they don't. This is where we used to rent
to
movies.
go to a store to rent a movie, go home, and then return it.
When they were VHS cassettes.
Yeah, however, it is a really good reminder that if you're not in tune to the future, then you stand to fall behind. And as we know, this quote was delivered in 2008, and actually Jim Keyes thought that the biggest competition was Walmart selling DVDs, and didn't see the future of Netflix specifically right in front of him, and Blockbuster Video was bankrupt by 2011. So again, as a reminder for us as educators that if we kind of put our heads in the sand and don't understand that AI and ChatGPT are going to be part of our students' future, then we're going to be doing them a disservice by not teaching them how to use it and how to use it properly. When it comes to plagiarism, this was one of the biggest concerns. In this course, I had the opportunity to speak to administrators and teachers from across the country who are all having the same challenge, which was how do we address artificial intelligence when it comes to plagiarism? Is it plagiarism using artificial intelligence, using ChatGPT? And more traditional plagiarism is easy to spot. You copy somebody else's work, you pass it in as your own, and that's plagiarism. ChatGPT specifically adds a lot of gray areas now that we can see on the chart, which one of these is plagiarism. And there's a couple of absolutes here that, a student writes all of the assignment on their own and passes it in. That's not plagiarism. A student puts a prompt into ChatGPT and turns that in as their own. That's plagiarism. But then there's all these other examples in between where we wonder, is this plagiarism? Which ones of these, for instance, consulting with an AI platform for ideas and then writing something. Which one of these areas is going to be part of our students' future? And even so, which ones of these would we use in our own professional life? And it varies. Every individual feels that it's something different within this matrix, of which there are many more examples within the matrix, of which is plagiarism and which isn't. Which makes it very difficult for us to create a policy around artificial intelligence. How do we identify in our student handbook, for example, which ones of these are plagiarism and which ones aren't? How many more examples would not fall within these? And we'd have to identify new examples of plagiarism. So part of the course was developing a policy that all districts that were partaking in it could walk away from and say, no, that's a policy that we think that we could give to our teachers, which is on the next slide. So understanding that artificial intelligence is going to be part of our students' future, and understanding that we as educators have a responsibility to teach them how to use it and how to use it properly, we also have to identify that it's going to be used potentially improperly within our schools. We have to understand that every student is capable of and potentially going to use it. So we wanted to give our teachers some autonomy as to when it can and cannot be used within the school. So this was presented to all of our teachers, and it shows 3 different options. So for every assignment that our teachers are giving, they have the option to say, no, you cannot use artificial intelligence on this assignment. This is an essay. I expect you to write the essay on your own. You may use outside sources. You have to cite those sources, but I do not want you to use artificial intelligence. Option 2, as we call it, we just started naming these red light, yellow light, green light assignments. Students are allowed to use AI if they obtain permission from their teacher and explain how they're going to use it, what program they're going to use, and how they're going to apply it to the assignment. And option 3 would be that students are encouraged to use AI, which I know sounds sometimes, how would we encourage our students to use AI? But I'll get into that in a minute, of the number of different examples of that we could perhaps take a look at. But we encourage students to use AI, discuss it with the teacher still, how they're using it and how they're applying it to their understanding of the learning standards. And that was very well received from our teachers at the beginning of this year. So now, fast forward to the 23-24 school year. I'm no longer in our admin meeting saying this is the end of education, thanks to Dr. Flaherty and Dr. Shirocek. And we have come to this understanding that, again, AI is going to be part of our students' future, and we need to shift in our understanding of the need to embrace it and then adjust our teaching practices accordingly. Ironically enough, with something like ChatGPT, reading and writing skills have become even more important because it's now the understanding of the workforce and what the future is going to look like for our students, that they're going to be using AI in their professional life as a prompt to get them started on something. But they're also going to have to use analytical skills to tell them if what AI has created is beneficial to them. And then they're also going to have to put their personal touches on what AI has created as it applies to however they're using it in their professional career. Those skills are, the reading and writing skills that go along with that are beyond mandatory. So our reading and writing skills have become even more important as students go out into their future. Additionally, UDL strategies and student-centered learning have been brought to the forefront and have become even more important as students are going to need to learn how to collaborate and work collaboratively in their jobs in the future in an AI world.
Paul, as part of that, are they doing any work around teaching students how to evaluate what they're reading and the authenticity or accuracy of the information?
Yeah, and those standards have always been embedded in our humanities classes. And again, it's always interesting for me as the humanities guy to come out here and talk about technology, but it has really impacted humanities the most. And those skills that Dr. Flaherty just mentioned have always been embedded in our history courses and in our English courses. Now it's been highlighted that those skills are going to be even more important in the future. So just what we've done at BHS, we did this at the end of last school year, and the beginning of this school year. Teachers have been introduced to new ways to leverage AI in the classroom. Since the end of the school year last year, all summer, literally hundreds of artificial intelligence platforms have been introduced, and more being introduced every day. Some of those make it difficult for our teachers. Some of them are very, very beneficial to our teachers and to our students. Specifically, there's AI tools that can help with differentiating instruction, that can help with differentiating reading levels, that can break down language barriers for our ELL students. And there's even kind of some fun ones, like one of the more interesting assignments I saw this fall, our students in the 11th grade were reading Frankenstein, And one of our teachers used an image generator, it's called Bing, and it's made by Microsoft, to have students come up with a description of the Frankenstein monster. And whoever, they got to judge the image that image creator made, and whose Frankenstein monster came out the best. Teachers have also, and again, plagiarism is a concern with artificial intelligence. Teachers have been trained in identifying specifically through Google Docs when AI has been used inappropriately, and then how to have those discussions with students about the appropriate use of artificial intelligence and plagiarism. And then, of course, we're continuing to monitor changes in AI, which is almost a daily job, and plan to continue to adjust our practices as educators as those changes continue to take place.
Questions? Dr. Ms. Saba?
Oops. I think that I was thoroughly impressed with the presentation that we saw at the school committee conference on the Cape, where MIT researchers, including research assistants, were completely bummed to have missed the Beaver Festival and the pranks with the beaver statue at MIT, only to learn that AI wrote such a compelling description of the event that the students thought it was real. And we also saw the Obama deep fake, where, President Obama, in my mind, looked way too young to be saying the words that he was saying, but it's very convincing. And so I think what you've hit upon is having that critical understanding that not all media sources, not all sources are credible, and having that discerning eye. It makes me feel really sad for some of our students. I think encyclopedias and physical libraries were the way that I went through school, and the internet started just as I was graduating college, and so I didn't have any of these worries. But I think making our students critical thinkers about where they're getting information, what sources they're citing, and even, what questions they're asking of technology, protecting their own privacy and other things along those lines is super important. And hopefully, with the work that you're sharing with our educators and some of the other work that's already ongoing, we can protect our students and help them be critical thinkers in terms of how and what technology they use to assist their lives. Thank you.
Are there any other questions from our students or our online members? Okay, seeing none. Just a notice for everybody so that you can put it into your calendar. We will be meeting a night early, and for our students, this means that you don't have to come to a school committee meeting on Valentine's Day. So we're going to move, there was a conflict in schedules, so we're going to be moving our February meeting from February 14th to Tuesday, February 13th. This is going to be a committee meeting of the whole. We have a lot of work to do with the high school as far as their program of studies and some other changes that they want to do. So we knew we could not get the work done in an hour. And so we're going to make it a joint meeting. And we invite CISL to join the committee meeting of the whole and listen to what's happening there. And when we finish that work, we'll take a break. And then you're welcome to stay for the regular school committee meeting of the whole, but you can also leave at that point if you have other commitments or schoolwork that you need to do. Okay. And that being said, we would need a motion for an adjournment.
I'll make a motion that we adjourn the meeting of Curriculum Instruction and Student Life.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Ms. Abel, can you call a roll?
Absolutely. Dr. Mackenzie DeFranza,
Yes.
Ms. Robinson,
Yes.
Ms. Twombly,
Yes.
myself, yes. Finn? Eleanor, Ellie? Yes. Sadie? And Althea. We are adjourned.
Thank you all. Have a good evening.
Good job.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us this evening. This is the Beverly School Committee, regular school committee for January 10th, 2024. We are meeting in a hybrid fashion, which means we have a remote meeting platform running, allowing for remote participation and public access to all of the open portions of our meeting. We also have BevCam here with us. They are streaming and broadcasting our meeting this evening. Thank you, BevCam. We appreciate it. On June 16, 2021, the former governor signed Chapter 20 of Acts of 2021, and on February 12th, and again on July 16, 2022, he extended provisions to, among other things, allow public bodies to continue to hold meetings remotely until March 31st, 2023. And now our current governor and the legislature has extended that provision an additional 2 years until March 31st, 2025. These acts specifically suspend the need for a quorum and the chair to physically be present and asks our body to use technical methods to allow for safe public access. As a side note, Beverly has prior approval from the Attorney General for remote participation. However, through that permission, the chair and a quorum do physically need to be present, and then the remote participants can participate after this act's extensions expire. Tonight is a regular meeting. This means there is an opportunity in our agenda to address the body. For public comments, you can send your thoughts in advance to the chair or to request a remote link to join us on the remote platform. Or we have a sign-up sheet in the blue folder at the chair there where you can sign up. We do ask that you limit your remarks to 3 minutes in time. And please remember, it's an opportunity to address the body and we will not be replying. Joining us today are members of the school committee and various members of the district administration and leadership teams. I will conduct a full roll call attendance in a moment just to make sure we know who is present on both the remote platform and in person. Do remember, if you are joining us remotely, that any audio or video you supply on the platform will become part of the meeting record, and as such, we encourage you to use the mute functionality to prevent background noises. I would now like to conduct our full roll. Mayor Cahill?
Here.
Kimberly Coelho?
Here.
Ken-Ann Mackenzie DeFranza?
Here.
Karen Robinson?
Here.
Jeffrey Silva?
Here.
Lorinda Visnick? Here. And I am Rachel
Here.
Abel.
Sorry, I didn't have my mic on, Mr. Kim from BevCam. Sorry.
We are joined by our superintendent, Dr. Suzanne Turocek.
Here.
Our assistant superintendent, Dorothy Flaherty. Here. Looking online, I don't see Dr. Morgan yet. We have Ms. Erin Brown. Here. Ms. Bethany Splansky. Here. Mark Thomas. Here. Okay. Online, we are joined by one of our educators, Jennifer Paguyo, and we have a number of parents, caregivers, and students in our audience. So we won't wait another moment to jump into our agenda. Our first order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. And Mayor Cahill, if you wouldn't mind leading us in the pledge, I'd appreciate the help.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much, Mayor. And Dr. Turocek and Mr. Thomas, if you wouldn't mind introducing our students.
Good evening. Tonight we want to honor our fall All-Stars, both NEC and Salem News All-Stars. So we'll go right through each sport, but to note from my end, these guys are also great citizens around school, which is, I'd say, just as important, if not more important to us. So for cross country, we have Riley McGoldrick, NEC and Salem News. And if you're here, come on up. There's some people here. Congratulations, Riley. Tara McNeil, NEC and Salem News. Calvin Barrett, NEC and Salem News. Jason Provost, NEC and Salem News. Jason.
One more handshake.
Come on, come back up.
One more. Now you all know you gotta do shake.
Yeah. Ryan Whiting, NEC. Charles Bossler, NEC. And lastly, for cross country, Allison Prassey, NEC, and Salem News. For golf, Lucas Carboni, NEC, and Salem News. For volleyball, Taya Killam, NEC. Congratulations. For field hockey, Liz Wilder, NEC, and Salem News. Congratulations. Lily Shea, NEC, and Salem News. For football, Jack Considine, NEC, and Salem News. Daniel Conant, NEC. Ben Herring, NEC. For football cheering, Lily Robinson, NEC. Congratulations. For soccer, Wilson De Leon, NEC, and Salem News. Owen McCarthy, NEC, and Salem News. Mark Beatty, NEC. Congratulations, Mark. Thank you. Pietro Fusco, NEC. Congratulations. Emma Fitzgerald, NEC, and Salem News. No, it's just. And last for soccer, Connor Conley, Salem News. Just think I forgot, yeah. Congratulations to all our All-Stars.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. Great job.
Thank you. And if the school committee would indulge a 3-minute recess so we can congratulate our student athletes.
So moved.
And their families for all of the contributions they make to our community. Thank you. Second pass. Okay, great. There we go. 3 minutes. Okay, thank you everyone for that brief recess. It's always exciting to see our student athletes and their caregivers, and we welcome them and then are sad when they leave us and our audience is now empty. We are still joined online by a couple of members of our staff, and Dr. Morgan has joined us. I didn't realize he was trying to get in the waiting room, so we now have Dr. Morgan with us as well online. Our next item is to hear our report from our student representative, Delia Gauker.
Thank you. School began for 2024 at BHS on January 2nd. We had a 2-hour delay this Monday due to snow. For school activities, the music department has had a successful winter concert with 3 choral groups, band, jazz band, and string ensemble. Santa made an appearance to conduct the band and sleigh ride. Musical and Drama Fest cast, crew, and pit are preparing for their March performances. Yesterday, there was a career discovery fair during advisory that students had the option to attend to learn about 2-year college, trade schools, or jobs they could enter into directly after graduation. Winter sports are still well underway. Marketing students who participate in DECA are attending the district competition on Thursday, tomorrow at Endicott College. And all students are preparing for the end of second quarter and midterms coming up. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that report. And as always, please stay as long as you can, but we do understand you have quite a bit of homework, so duck out when you need to. Our next agenda item is the approval of our meeting records. I'm first looking for a motion for our December 13th, 2023 school committee minutes.
So moved.
Thank you, Mayor Cahill.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Visnick. We are all in person. Were there any edits or amendments? Ms. Visnick.
So in this set of meeting minutes, I arrived late, and so I already sent those edits to Miss Bergeron. And Miss Bergeron, who's pretending to be Dr. Sue Chirocek right now, and Dr. Chirocek's pretending to be Dr. Flaherty. So basically, the meeting minutes need to be amended to say what time I arrived, and I did miss a number of votes, and they're all captured correctly as my being absent. And then I give my chair update, and then there are some number of votes where I'm here. So it's really just a matter of amending that I arrived at a certain time.
Thank you so much for that. Good catch. Were there any other edits or corrections that we needed to make? We have a motion on the table to approve the December 13th, 2023 with the addition of the arrival time for Ms. Bisnick. All those in favor? 7-0. Oh, that's so easy. So easy that I'm now looking for a motion to approve our meeting records from our organizational meeting on January 2nd, 2024.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Bisnick.
Second.
Oh, did I hear a second over here? Okay, Dr. McKenzie, I thought yeah, and a third by Ms. Robinson. There we go. Were there any edits or corrections that we needed to make to this set of meeting records? I'm not seeing any. All those in favor? 7-0. Thank you. Now is the time for any comments from resident voice related to our agenda items or even not related to our agenda items. Ms. Bergeron, did we receive any requests via the resident voice email?
I have not.
Okay, and seeing no one on the sign-up sheet or in our audience, I am looking online, not seeing any hands raised. We will move on. Our next item is 6 items by consensus. There are 3 warrants listed on our agenda in various amounts. I'm looking for a motion to approve them as a group.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Visnick.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Robinson. Almost Ms. Coelho. Okay. Generally, we don't have any conversations about these, but I just want to look around, see if there's any questions. All those in favor of approving the warrants? Passes 7-0. Dr. Chirocek, over to you for your superintendent reports.
I have just, I have two items on the report this evening. First one being just an update on our progress towards the school calendar 24-25, as well as a budget update and where we are in the budget process. So I wanted to bring forward just some information and some work that we've done. We met, I think it was back late November, and we were talking about some, trying to proactively address some new ideas for the calendar, school year calendar for 24-25. I will say that of all the calendars that we've had to put together as I've been superintendent, the 24-25 poses some very particular challenges. And so it's an interesting year. I'm glad that we started the process early so we can consider a lot of the different questions that I have and decisions that you'll have to make as we look at the calendar. So first of all, as we discussed, I had sent out a survey this week to parents and included in it a question regarding religious and ethnic observances, just to kind of make sure that we got some input from our stakeholders as we think about that, and that can help any decision making that you have. I'll have that data available for you at our next meeting. Also, you have in front of you paper copies of some sample formats. That was one of the conversations that we had. There was some discussion about what the formats might look like. And so this is not the proposal. This is just a draft for you to understand what the formats would look like. But we wanted to make sure that we were looking and offering you that option. So the top one with the calendar, a traditional sort of 12-month calendar look, is one of the things that you had requested to see what it would look like. Donna has put a lot of work into our calendars in the last week or so. And has set that up. Again, this is not a draft calendar. It is just I'm sending it to you for format, but it will also help you as you think about some of the questions that I'm going to pose. Basically, this calendar would color code sort of the different types of days that we have, whether they be early release days, whether they're no school days. There's a couple of yellow. There's a yellow one with an asterisk. That's a conversation in question that we have going on. But this would give you a general outline, and it can help you as I talk about the challenges that the 24-25 school year calendar poses. We have contractual obligations that we cannot start school before Labor Day when Labor Day falls before September 3rd. So we automatically default to beginning that look at when students return to after Labor Day. That being said, September 3rd, which would have been the original start date, is the state primary election day. And so we had talks and conversations about whether or not we would hold school when there was a primary election. None of the administrators or myself feel it's prudent to have the very first day of school be a day when it's a primary or preliminary election. So, that day would, we think, one of the proposals is transition to a professional development day for teachers so that they would have their 2 professional development days the week before and then a 3rd professional development day. That would give us 3 days before the start of the year. It won't be the first time. If you remember when COVID was, when we were returning from COVID, we had a delayed start in person and we had a number of days, and actually there was a lot of positive feedback from teachers about the ability to have those days ahead of time before students came in. So that's the suggestion that we would be working on right now. In addition, because of the way the calendar falls, it poses an overall question about the graduation day. So graduation there are some compliance regulations with the Department of Ed. The graduation day cannot be outside of a 12-day window from the last day of school, which is the 180th day. And so therefore, when we back that up, we have to depending on what decisions we make about religious and ethnic observances, that might push graduation from June 1st out to June 8th. Which then causes a ripple effect when we look at quarters and when we look at Reach internship and when we look at how the calendar falls. So that is going to be part of the discussion. And so, as I said, this is just a kind of really complicated year in putting the calendar together. But we've worked through in terms of the regulations and the suggestions that we have. So this committee will hold its discussion on the calendar at the committee of the whole. I'm not proposing that we hold that discussion tonight. I think, people need some time to think about it. I need to gather a little bit more information. But some of the items that we'll be considering, I thought it would be helpful if you knew going in what items we'd be thinking about. So the state primary day, my recommendation is that we have a professional development day on that day. So that would be a change to the calendar. I am in conversation with the elementary principals about the pre-KK start date because this calendar would push the first day of kindergarten to be a Friday. There's a question about whether that might work well or may not work well based upon how they're working orientations and screenings and all of that. I'm letting the elementary principals have some more discussion and time to think that through. I believe that at this point, that probably would be that they would hold their orientations on the 5th and then first day on the 6th. But again, I'm not making that decision right now, just throwing it out there that that's sort of one of the questions. The professional development day schedule, and that includes looking at what, that we made a change this year for conferences, for elementary conferences. We had traditionally had a full day professional development day in which they held elementary conferences somewhere. I always use December 10th as the benchmark, somewhere around that time. And this year we held a half day on that December 10th day and utilized meeting time that contractually that the teachers have for outside of the school time. And there's a 50-50 right now in feedback as to how that went, but in terms of efficiency for the calendar, I'm leaning toward the recommendation that we would continue with what we did this year, a half day on the Friday and scheduling the conferences outside of the school day beyond that. And then there's the question of, ironically, the year we're taking up the conversation about religious and ethnic observances, there's no question about Yom Kippur because it falls on a weekend. So it's not in the calendar this year, but Good Friday is. And so that's still the conversation about Good Friday. Again, I'm collecting some data from our families. I would encourage anyone that's listening to fill out the survey that I sent in regards to the district improvement plan. It has a question on there about the calendar, and our response rate has actually been pretty good so far. So I'll be able to bring you some data on what families are thinking. And then again, the graduation day, switching from June 1st. We cannot hold it on June 1st if we don't have school on Good Friday. That will automatically push us out of that 12-day window. But if we have school on Good Friday, we would be within the 12-day window. We could stick with the June 1st graduation day. So those are, like I said, there's a lot on there. I'll answer any questions that you have, but then also I really would urge you to hold the discussion, any real discussion about, I'm not asking for a decision tonight is what I'm saying.
Sure. I do see questions from Mayor Cahill and then Ms. Robinson, and I think you also invited questions outside of the meeting as well.
I absolutely invite questions.
Okay. Mayor Cahill.
Always.
Thanks, Madam President. Just a quick one, Dr. Trochik. So in the 24-25 proposed calendar, you show in June 1 as graduation day, and I understand the 12-day piece. Does that suggest that if we use even one snow day?
No, it does not. So good question. Snow days so it's the 180th day planned on your calendar. So if the June 17th is the 180th day on our original calendar, and so it's 12 days from June 17th. And if we use the school day, the snow days, we don't get penalized for that. We don't have to readjust.
Okay, so even if we used 5 snow days, the seniors would still be getting 165 days of school prior to June 1?
We checked with DESE, so we got the official word from DESE that the intent is that you plan your calendar with 180 days, and that when you plan graduation, that you don't exceed a 12-day window from the 180th day. Should you choose to make an adjustment because there's 5 snow days, you are certainly welcome to do that as a district, but it's not a requirement from DESE.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. That's what they said.
Okay.
Ms. Robinson.
I have no idea if this would even help anything, but would it be possible to hold the virtual school day? So have freshmen come to school on the 3rd? Because that's not a voting place, it's on a voting location,
But we
and
can't-
have the
but-
virtual day on that day, I don't even know if that would help.
Well, it wouldn't help because it's the
It's
K to
dist-
12.
Oh, it's district-wide.
Right, yeah, it's all schools. So it's the 4 elementary schools that have voting that really are the
Right.
most impactful on that.
Yeah, okay.
I think I saw a hand, Dr. Mackenzie DeFranza, and then Ms. Bisnick.
I was going to ask a similar question because I felt like the PD day coming on the 3rd seemed really close to the ones on the 28th and 29th. But if we can't have a virtual day that day, then it sounds like that's a non-starter. But I was trying to think of another way to make sure that should there be a snow day, there's still another day to buffer potentially having to make any changes. But sounds like no.
Ms. Bisnick.
My question has to do with, will you please remind me what is the official procedure relative to the staff and the calendar? Do they get a say in it? Do they
Yeah, so-
have to vote on it before
No,
we?
So I don't know if it's policy, but I know for procedure, I always meet with Julia and go over the calendar, but the calendar is strictly in the purview of the school committee. And so the teachers don't they don't have a vote per se, but I always consult. Julia and I actually work really well together. We look at the calendar together, and more importantly, we look sort of at those quarters and trimesters and those dates and when grades are due and all of those things. So we work with them. Before I bring it to you for a vote, I work with the union very closely to at least have that conversation, and I share the calendar with her. She asks questions often, in a similar way.
I think that's fantastic, and I appreciate that. I'm just concerned, especially this year, to think about introducing new changes in the same year that we're going into negotiations. So I'll just call attention to that, that's all.
Yes, and it's a challenging year nonetheless, without all of those things, just because of the way the calendar falls, just because of the way the days roll, and Christmas is on a Wednesday, and so that there's a lot of things that change the way the calendar flows. So, and I just would say, Dr. Mackenzie DeFranza, the 3 days in a row, that will shift a little bit of how we would use that day, but we would in more likely embrace the fact that we had 3 professional development days in a row and utilize it to kind of do a series of related things so that, it really gives an opportunity for, we did, I think, 10 days. Was it 10 days at the beginning of the pandemic? And it was very well received. And teachers, really did actually find real value in the ability to have that time to plan beforehand. So I don't think I don't think that would be, but again, Julia would give me some more feedback on that as well.
Okay. Thank you, committee, for your questions. Again, Dr. Turchak will entertain questions before we meet again to discuss this at our Committee of the Whole on January 24th. And I
No.
believe
Oh, yes, Committee of the
January
Whole.
20, Committee of the 20, yeah, Committee of the Whole. And I believe we'll have some survey results from some of the surveys.
So I'll
as
bring
well.
forward some of that. And I will, we'll have that discussion, and then on the 13th, I'll bring forward just what a proposal looks like, and then you guys can take it from, then it's in your hands from there. But policy says that I have to bring it to you by February 13th, so.
Great. Thank you so much. So we'll anticipate a vote on January 24th, but we'll have a little bit of breathing room in case we can't quite get it figured out. I know a lot of parents are eager to figure out summer camp and plans and what the start date is, et cetera. Let's move along.
Okay,
The
so,
budget update.
so then the second item that I have is, it's just an update sort of on the process and where we are in the process. Again, I always start my discussions around budget. This is just a reminder of our district goal areas that are currently in our district improvement plan. I think you've heard a couple times this evening at CISL and now that we're in the process of creating a new district improvement plan. That was the purpose of the survey that I had sent out, eliciting some feedback. That survey went both to staff and parents in terms of the, ratings on our work in the district improvement plan for the past 3 years. And we always keep an eye on our goals because our budget really is a reflection of what we're committed to in Beverly. So in terms of priorities, I brought together tonight just a condensation of the conversations that we all had. I met individually with each of you and had conversations around what priorities you might have as we think about crafting this FY25 budget. Part of the conversation among all of you was the transition from ESSER funding, the knowledge that the ESSER funding ends this year, and that we have to make decisions as to either identifying funding sources for things that we want to maintain or eliminating either if they were positions, some of the positions that were funded that way. Also in that consideration was the sustainable plan for sustainability, not meaning recycling, but meaning technology, but to make sure that we are positioned for the next few years so that the work that we've done establishing the different types of one-to-one programs that we have for students at all of our levels, that we have the funding to maintain those devices and the infrastructure and the wiring and all of that stuff. In addition, as all of you know, a tremendous amount of the ESSER money went towards new curriculum purchases. We were able to revise our curriculum in English language arts pre-K to 12, in math pre-K to 12. We're looking at our science curriculum. We're looking at our foreign language curriculum. All of that funding was, all of these the revitalization of our curriculum was made available through that ESSER funding. That curriculum, however, given the state of education now, all comes with licensing, and so making sure that our budget sustains the licenses that we'll need to continue to utilize that curriculum effectively, as well as capital expenses. We spent a lot of our ESSER money on capital expenses, playgrounds at Ayers and Cove, flooring at Centerville, the outdoor learning area here, the outdoor classroom at Hannah. So a lot of those things were made available through the ESSER funding, and we want to make sure that we have a plan going forward that we don't, that we have an ability to continue to look at what needs to happen within our schools and make sure our capital expenses are met. Another big area of priority for all of you was in the area of academics. We had a lot of conversations over the past few months around math, and in particular, one of my own superintendent goals for this year centers around reimagining math and taking a look at math achievement and making sure that we're getting the best outcomes for all of our students in math. We continue to look at COVID recovery. A lot of conversations that I had with many of you centered around, where are we? How are we doing with our literacy and science? And are we making sure that we're on track to kind of recover all of those gains? In some of our conversations, we talked about academic support classes and how are we making sure that we have the resources we need and provisioning as we need for academic support, whether it's for interventions, whether it's special education students, whether it's EL students, making sure that we're taking care of that within the budget. Conversations around social emotional needs, a lot of conversations around counselors and City Connects and the importance of making sure that we don't let that slide or that we don't lose any of those gains that we've made around the supports we've built for our students around mental health and social emotional. And then the other big area is that continuing to take a look at fostering equity. We've created a family engagement team in the district. Earlier this evening at CISL, Dr. Flaherty and Megan Sudak presented some work around attendance. Attendance is a really big area of growth for us. We're doing really well. I think we're addressing a lot of things, but chronic attendance is a problem nationwide, statewide, district-wide. Beverly's not immune to that. And so taking a look at our attendance, what we can do to proactively help support a better attendance by all students, support families and systems that might be in the way of people coming into school regularly. We had conversations, about transportation, which also lies in with some of that family engagement and some of those attendance issues, and making sure that we're continuing to work in transportation. Access and opportunity for extracurricular. That was another conversation that I had with many of you. We continued to take a look at advanced coursework. Many of you mentioned what are we doing on that, and I know we foreshadowed that we have some conversations coming around within our math pathways and what that's going to look like and how we think it will help encourage more students to take more advanced coursework. Career pathways and early college, we've secured actually grants in both areas for developing our plan for that as we go forward. And then DBIE, diversity, belonging, inclusion, and equity, just continuing those efforts. We have, as a district administrative team, worked closely with Dr. Amante Jackson, and I think some of you saw her at the MASC conference. We're continuing that work. Dr. Morgan leading us in our Opportunity, Access, and Equity Department, ways that we can build and grow. And I think thinking pretty deeply about what professional development and how we can encourage more broad participation by our staff in some of the offerings that we have around that. So these are the priorities that sort of rose out of the conversations that I had with all of you. I hope that whatever you thought you said to me was captured in the list that I have here. But this sort of drives some of the decision-making as we build the budget and as we move forward. So the other area that we look at this point in time in the year is enrollments. And this is just updating you. I've used this for the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is my 6th year, so I like that. These are our enrollments historically. I think it's important to understand in a district the size of Beverly, 4,600, a fluctuation of 40 or 50 in a year is not a big number. And so one of the things about Beverly is our enrollments have actually remained relatively stable, actually very stable in comparison to some of the districts that are around us. A lot of our neighboring districts are experiencing real drops in enrollment. That's not a situation for us. We seem to be, relatively stable. What is unusual for us is a cohort, like I call a cohort a grade level, so fluctuations in size. So I was very much taken aback when I put this together and realized we have 394 fourth graders heading to the middle school next year. That's a really big class. I think the only time we had one larger was the year we opened. I think we might have had a 398, but that is essentially another whole team. And so this is the purpose of utilizing the enrollments at this time, right? Because we need to be planning. Where do we have areas that we will need more teachers? Are there areas that might need less teachers? But then the third grade's 373, so that's out the window. But that's the way we utilize these numbers, right? How do we know where the students are? What are the grade levels? And where do we need resources? So the elementary, again, relatively stable, yet just in different grade levels. At the middle school, same thing. We're pretty steady across in our enrollments. I will note that 323 kids will exit grade 8 and 394 will enter in grade 5. So that's a big shift for that building. 70 more students on a daily basis. So that's something they'll have to plan for and take a look at what they need to do for resourcing. But otherwise, the class sizes, again, they just fluctuate by 10 to 15 in a grade level, and that's not unusual in Beverly given the mobility. And then finally, high school, and these are our high school numbers, a little bit lower this year. We, as you remember, had 62 students go to Essex Tech out of 8th grade last year. That's something that impacts the high school numbers a little bit, but still relatively stable. We have a very small senior class there this year, what is their rising class? So the numbers in 8th grade right now are 323. We don't know how many students will go to the tech or other places, so that number, it could be just an even swap up there. But that's the way we utilize the enrollment numbers as we start to look at resourcing. And those are the important conversations that Jean and I are having right now. We meet individually with every building principal. Erin Brown is there. We're looking at staffing patterns. We're looking at enrollment numbers, and we're making decisions about individual building budgets that way. Those numbers, the numbers 4, 5, if everyone was really doing the math fast, the 4589 includes our preschoolers, sorry. And our preschool enrollment right now is on the day that I did this, it was at 115. I actually believe we have 8 to 10 new preschoolers arriving in the next couple of weeks. We just completed a screening in which, we have new students that will be joining us. The preschool enrollment is much more fluid. We do screenings throughout the year, identify students that want to come, as well as some students age into preschool if there are students with special needs, and they come in through early intervention, so they come based upon when their birthdays are. We have 70 students out of district, right, 70, and I think that is we have a pretty stable out of district enrollment since we were at that high of 103 back in FY19. And then our homeschool numbers are at 85. They remain also relatively stable. So those are our enrollments. Again, I'm having those conversations with principals, how we're staffing, what our staffing needs look like. This is just a summary sheet. FY24's appropriated budget was $72,653,940. Of the 72 million, 85% of that is salary and benefits, 61,605,686. We have contractual obligations that we already know about, whether or not teachers are stepping down from, by coming back for an additional year. The cost of our steps right now is $695,320. We know the lanes, those are the column moves, people who move due to acquiring additional graduate credits. That would be $455. We have, at healthcare, we worked with the city, with Brian and the mayor, and identified 5% as a good number for us to kind of benchmark our healthcare increase this year. That 5% is $524,320. That $10,486,404 is part of that $61 million that salaries and benefits line up there. So just sort of letting you see, kind of get a feel for, as we come into conversations about budget, where the money is and what we're doing. I always, a 1% COLA, we just put that up so that as we enter into negotiations, you just have in your mind, what is 1% of the salary is going to look like? And so a 1% of our salaries is $468,534. And that is for all employees, not just Unit A. So that's just a number that we use so that we're making sure that we have a good number in our heads. Where we are right now, so last year we had the $72,653,940. At this point right now, we're entering into, as I said, we're still examining enrollments, looking at non-salaried needs, making sure that we have all that information. We'll be sitting with the mayor and Bryant to have conversations, but more importantly, we're kind of all wondering and waiting on what Chapter 70 will look like for us. We've had some nice increases in Chapter 70 for the last couple of years. I would like to think that we'll have another one as the SOA rollout was considered to be over 6 years. Again, I'm not sure, I won't know. The governor's budget is due out at the end of January, so that will give us a lot more information as to a direction and what kind of funding we'll be looking for in that. And then, as always, House Ways and Means budget comes out in April, Senate budget in May, and that's when we know what our final Chapter 70 monies look like.
For the clawbacks that were announced on Monday by the governor, do we have any concerns about the Chapter 70 that we were already expecting for this year? Or?
So I've been told no. I've been told that they won't impact any of the education funding or the town, what is it called, Mayor? The UGA? Unrestricted. Yeah. As we've been told that it does not impact any of those things. And I don't know, Mayor, if you have any more information on that.
Mayor Cahill.
Yeah. I hope you're right, and I think that's every intention of the governor. As we all read, they made some 9C cuts, some pretty modest. I think it was in total about $350 million out of the state budget being much greater. But one of the main ways they did it was they cut all the earmarks in half. Right? They didn't take away earmarks that legislators had secured for their communities, but they cut them all in half. In Beverly, what that meant is we had a $200,000, no, I'm going to get it wrong. We had an earmark for the Simon Street playgrounds that was cut in half. We had another earmark for parks and playgrounds generally that was cut in half. And, hopefully they don't have to do anything more like that with any local accounts. But
Thank
guess
you
we gotta
for
wait and
that
see, right?
additional info. Are you ready for other questions?
Yep, I am. This is my last slide. To let you know what our next steps are. Budget meetings with the principals and department heads continue. Our review of enrollments and staffing needs. We're reviewing our non-staff need costs. And then we'll get together and work on a budget from there. So now I have
Ms. Visnick.
signs.
My question may well be for the mayor more than the superintendent of schools. My understanding about the what you called clawbacks, Ms. Abel, and what you called earmarks was that in fact it was grants. The monies that they were cutting were all in involved with grants. So the question then becomes, do we have a grant from the state that might in fact be affected? Because if it's like playground, would you would you consider rewording these playground quote unquote earmarks as grants?
No. I've got to go back and read the couple State House News Service articles, but the earmarks are earmarks. The earmarks are things that legislators go into the state budget process trying to get for their districts, and they've helped us in a lot of different ways. Grants are separate. I don't know if any grants that were applied for and awarded have been part of the 9C cuts. I mean, the last time there were 9C cuts was 7 or 8 years ago when they went pretty deep. These aren't terribly deep across the board, and hopefully, I know the governor talked about some adjustment to revenue projections, and I think kind of different state agencies kind of tracking their discretionary accounts and just trying to budget to a tighter line between now and the end of the fiscal year, and they're hoping that'll take care of it.
I would say that the grants you're thinking of are our entitlement grants. Those are federal grants, so they wouldn't be impacted. The major amount of our funding that comes in the form of grants is the federal grants. Those are the entitlement Title I, Title IIA, those things. So, certainly something we'll keep our eye on, obviously, as it goes forward. And I think, the fact that the state budget, that the governor's budget is due at the end of January will give us a lot more information around the Chapter 70 and the unrestricted government aid, so.
Thank you so much.
Right.
Not seeing any other questions. I'll move right along. The school committee chair updates. I guess I should report out from our organizational meeting. You have all foolishly selected me to be the humble servant as chair again. We have our vice president, Lauren Noviznik, and recording secretary, Karen Robinson. Chairing our curriculum instruction student life committee is Dr. Ken-Ann Mackenzie DeFranza. And continuing with finance and facility is Ms. Lipviznik, who's also picking up policy, and I am holding on to negotiations as per our policy. We have a few upcoming meetings. January 24th is our finance and facilities at 6:30 and our committee of the whole at 7:30. As we've previously discussed, we'll be looking more at our calendar in preparation for voting next year's school calendar. Probably also have some more budget discussions and continue our policy work. Speaking of policy, I believe the chair is looking to set a January 17th date for some policy work.
Yes, I expect that to be posted
Thank
tomorrow, maybe?
Okay. And as we discussed in our organizational meeting, for our schedule in February, we are going to move our February 14th meeting to February 13th, which is a Tuesday evening, with a 6:30 start for all members, where we will post the curriculum instruction student life as a committee of the whole, so we all can be updated on some of the administration's recommendations for programs of studies and different topics around the program of studies, so we can all be informed for those decisions. I would like to also offer that with our new term, we are seeking resident representatives, also called citizen representatives. By our primer, we are changing some of the language to be more inclusive, to invite anyone in our community that wishes to participate in our standing committees, that's our curriculum instruction student life and our finance and facility, to submit their letter of interest to our executive secretary, I almost called you Sue Trochak. Donna Bergeron. Name tag got me fooled. So Ms. Bergeron will be able to accept all those letters of interest, and we hope to make appointments and make it all official in the next couple of weeks so that we can have those important voices at the table in our upcoming meetings. Thank you to those who have applied already. I will be working with the standing committee chairs to make those appointments and send letters out. With that, we're going to go into our committee reports. Hopefully we can keep them just a little bit brief this evening. If Ms. Viznik, you wouldn't mind leading off the committee reports with finance and facilities, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you, Ms. Abel. Our FNF has not met since we all last met as a whole. But we met at the end of November, and we were trying to bring forward 4 policies this evening for a final reading. I'm going to propose that we not do that because the policies as included in our packet are not the correct versions. And so I wish to apologize profusely. As you've heard me say before, wearing my policy chair hat, I have a primer around how do we do policy work, and I think we found a, a big glitch, and that is that Ms. Bergeron, in all that she does for us, we need to make it easier for her to to know which versions of the policies we want brought forward. So we start with a version, and potentially in the subcommittee meeting, we make changes to it. And so I would like to propose, and I don't think we need to vote on this, but from a procedural point of view, that we have a staging Google Drive, and that then the chairs, right? So when you have a policy that your subcommittee edits, and you want to bring that version forward, we would put it in the staging policy, and that's where Mr. Bergeron would then go to pull them out to distribute to all of us, and then assuming this body as a whole votes on the second reading to approve, then she would pull from there to put into the to put into our policy manual. And so, although there are these 4 policies on this evening's agenda, I don't feel right bringing them forward because what was in your packet, and I take full responsibility for it, what was in your packet is not an accurate representation of what we discussed and voted upon in our last FNF meeting.
Okay, thank you. So we'll table those policies, and then after our new chair for curriculum instruction student life, I was going to offer to also talk about the first reading, and this is kind of in a similar vein. So we'll do our curriculum instruction. Oh wait, your next meeting I just said was the 24th at 6:30.
Yes, we are considering possibly doing a 6 p.m. start time. Those discussions are on hold because Ms. Sherburne's on personal leave right now. But we have 2 policies that our committee has not yet brought forward. Because we have a lot more discussion on them, including the facility rental policy and its related forms. So those forms are out of date in terms of keeping up with the increases in salary for the people who have to cover when we open a building for someone to use it. And then the policy around accepting gifts to schools also needs a pretty deep discussion. So I'll try to give everybody as much notice as possible that we're going to have, if we go to the earlier start time, I guess maybe people on FNF, mark your calendars, potentially we're going to start at 6 instead of 6:30.
Or potentially we could bump our committee of the whole a little later if necessary. Just let us know which works better. Okay, thank you for that update. Dr. Mackenzie DeFranza, thank you so much for accepting the chair, and we just had our first curriculum instruction student life, so why don't you report out?
All right, thank you. And thank you, colleagues, for helping me with my training period. I wanted to just share that the students all gave really great updates, so I'm just going to pull a few highlights. From the middle school, they have begun their Junior Honor Society nomination process, which is pretty exciting. We also heard in the middle school that they're going to have a dance coming up, and they've started work on their global trips. And that includes the projects that are going to be ahead of that. For the seniors, they're looking at midterms, and they're also looking at some career discussions, and they also are doing that in the sophomore year. So those are all seemingly very positive things that they're experiencing that are getting them ready for the future. You also heard that we are looking at our attendance campaign discussion. So Dr. Flaherty spoke about that a little earlier in our meeting. We had a presentation from Dr. Flaherty and Megan Sudak to talk about how we will try to address the issues that are affecting attendance. So one thing that I thought was pretty important to mention from that conversation is the term truancy is now outdated. We've basically switched that to chronic absence or absenteeism because we are no longer necessarily focused on unexcused absences only. 10% of school missed for any reason is considered chronic absence. And so that allows for wraparound services to be engaged, certainly trying to look at root causes for absences. One of the things that Ms. Sudak mentioned was looking at the elementary school children and providing incentives so that they would be able to encourage their families to help them to be on time, which I thought was a great idea and somewhat novel, but to try to help them to be engaged and to understand. Also, at the younger ages, like the preschool, it may not be as obvious that tardies and attendance starts to matter and build up over time and be a good predictor of certain behaviors. And so that essentially is a focus to try to look at those numbers, look at pre-pandemic numbers, and see if we can continue to, increase the awareness for families. Right now, we're told that that number has doubled since the pandemic with regard to the numbers of children who identify as being chronically absent. So we continue to see that we are currently at target, but want to make good progress in that area. Finally, we had a presentation about artificial intelligence in our schools from Paul Casey, and we talked about really just acknowledging and agreeing that this is going to be a part of our educational future. So this prompts rethinking about plagiarism and cheating policies and guidelines. So ChatGPT introduces some gray areas, and so educators have been helped to consider what can and cannot be used. We've even developed a system that they were, basically asked to consider around when they can give permission, when they can deny permission, and when permission can be automatically granted. And so we pointed out, that there are some historical references as to why we don't want to ignore this and to see it as something that's coming along. It also means that reading, writing, and critical thinking skills are going to be ever more important so that students can make good decisions about reliable and credible information. And so teachers will continue to be trained on how to recognize and how to use this technology in a proper way and how to recognize improper use. So we really appreciated that very relevant and time-sensitive discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mackenzie DeFranza. And then in terms of the 4 policies with red lines that were in the packet, we will, for our second reading, provide sort of a flip-flop on the track changes. Right now, I would offer that GBEC about the drug-free workplace is actually showing the MASC differences versus what we had in our existing policy. So we will just do a flip-flop of the insertions versus the strike-throughs and make that a cleaner reading version for our consideration at our next meeting. For the policy IE, the Standing Committee on Curriculum Instruction and Student Life had actually agreed for recommending the removal of this policy. So you can read it all you'd like, but the recommendation on the table is to remove it. And so therefore it should have kind of been marked with strikeout rather than just, hey, here it is. So hopefully you didn't spend too much time wordsmithing that one. On IGA, IGD, this recommendation was to combine 2 policies, and again, we will work to make sure that it reflects exactly what we want Beverly's policy to show. For instance, we're not striking the word school committee, and we're not necessarily inserting the word systems, we're keeping districts and things like that. So we'll endeavor to make sure that it is a cleaner and better understood for our next meeting when we do the second reading. I think that's all. One other thing is that we are trying to be intentional about adding caregivers to any place that we reference our parents and guardians as well, in recognition for all those families that have caregivers. Yes.
Would you like a motion to vote on the policy that you're recommending, that the CISL is recommending
We
removal?
will need to see it twice, so we will wait for our
Leave
next
them as a
meeting
packet.
anyway.
Okay.
Yes, but thank you for that. So I think that concludes the curriculum instruction and student life updates. Again, we will get it figured out so that these policies come with the most clear set of instructions and understanding that we all can make good decisions here at the table and efficient decisions when we post them on our website. Okay, for negotiation subcommittee, I would just
Rachel, can I just want to add that our next meeting time is a little off our traditional schedule.
Sure.
So it'll be February 13th, which I believe is a Monday. So that is a Tuesday, but it's not Wednesday.
Yeah.
So, so it'll be February 13th is a date change.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, for negotiations subcommittee, I'll quickly report that we are in communications with the BTA and have intentions to set our initial meetings for February 5th. And with that, policy subcommittee.
Our policy subcommittee is going to meet next week on January 17th from 6 to 7 p.m. It will be a Zoom-based meeting in order to best accommodate our schedules. The agenda includes consideration of the adoption of policy IMDC, which is related to the calendars, and the name of that policy is Accommodation for Religious and Ethnic Observances. And if the policy committee believes that that policy would be useful to our group, especially as we talk about this new calendar that Dr. Trocheck presented and has envisioned, then we'll bring it forward to the whole. MASC has a number of other changes that I am currently reviewing. For example, the policy on and we have other policies as well that need to be reviewed, including our citizen rep related policies. And so the agenda is not yet built, but my goal will be to get it to Ms. Bergeron in plenty of time for her to post on Friday, and so that the committee members have the weekend to review the policies on the agenda. And I'm looking forward to our new policy committee member, Dr. Silva, joining us because we don't often get a new set of eyes, and I'm hopeful that his new eyes will review the policy primer and potentially that will drive further improvements in that document.
Okay. Next on our agenda are communications from school committee members. Are there any communications to bring to the table? Ms. Visnick?
I have a batch. I'll try to go fast. Concerns about Grover Street. I know there was a city-based meeting last night about streets that don't have sidewalks. I have a constituent who's very concerned about how many bus stops are on Grover Street with it in its current condition of being fairly thin and a section of it not having sidewalks. Those concerns were echoed when the snow came the other day because many bus stops are at a corner, and a corner gets an extra pile of snow due to the plowing, and so this makes for a very dangerous set of circumstances. I was hoping to take that up at FNF, but I don't have Ms. Sherborne to set that on the agenda just yet. Concerns around teacher retention, the expected upcoming changes to the math program and school ratings. Those all came in basically within the last day or two, so I haven't passed them out anywhere yet, but I'm very excited that today I did get an inquiry on a citizen, somebody who wants to serve as a citizen rep. That's always a lovely thing to find in one's text messages.
Thank you so much. Are there others? Ms. Robinson?
I just wanted to say that I received a similar letter about elimination of course levels for freshmen, so I'm going to pass that along to Dr. Trocheck.
The math leveling.
I also had received a communication that I passed along to Dr. Trocheck regarding just varsity sports versus their other offerings at the high school. Okay. No more hands? At this time, agenda item number 11 is for the chair to move that we vote to meet in executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, for purposes 7 and 3, and not to return to open session. Purpose 7 is to review and approve and keep confidential the minutes from our executive session meeting of December 13th, 2023. And purpose 3 is to discuss strategy with respect to and in preparation for collective bargaining with the BTA and AFSCME units, because an open discussion may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the committee. This was looking for a second. So we have a motion.
Second, sorry, Mr. BevCam, second.
We have a motion on the second to move into executive session and not return to open session. It does require a roll call vote. Mayor Cahill?
Yes.
Ms. Coelho?
Yes.
Dr. Mackenzie DeFranza?
Yes.
Ms. Robinson?
Yes.
Dr. Silva?
Yes.
Ms. Visnick?
Yes.
And Ms. Abel, yes. 7-0. The time is 8:41. The chair would like to restate that we are now moving into executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, for purposes 7 and 3, and we will not be returning to open session. Thank you so much, BevCam, for broadcasting us. Those of you who are joining us online, who are not joining us for executive session, may drop now. We thank you for your attendance. And we'll just give it a moment while I sit up.